I come with no other agenda than desperately trying to help people who are in need. And I see that as part of my role.
When Prince William becomes king, everything we thought we knew about the monarchy will be tested. From secret ceremonies to mind-blowing privileges, from rewriting ancient customs to reshaping the royal family itself, what lies ahead isn't just a new reign. It's the birth of a new royal era. But will William's bold changes shake the kingdom or save it? He left the chaos of London for peace, but the crown is calling him back. Prince William had always been seen as the royal who longed for a sense of normalcy, a life not constantly under the glare of tradition's spotlight. In a quiet corner of Windsor, far from the echoing corridors of power, he found that rare stillness in Adelaide Cottage. There, with Kate and their 3 children, he built a life that felt almost ordinary. School runs, park strolls, laughter, without cameras. It wasn't the royal fairy tale, it was something more delicate, human. But fate, as it often does with kings in waiting, had other plans. Buckingham Palace isn't just a house. It is the beating heart of the British monarchy, a living symbol of power, heritage, and scrutiny. And now, it calls him back. Not with tenderness, but with the full weight of centuries behind its voice. The palace, with its gold-plated ceilings and walls soaked in history, stands as a public throne more than a private home. William knows that moving in means stepping fully into the role he's been trained for his entire life. There's no room for hesitation. As the nation's future king, he can't lead from the sidelines anymore. The palace is in proximity to Parliament, has access to diplomacy, and has visibility to a global audience. The iconic balcony, where monarchs wave to oceans of people below, awaits his presence. Every brick screams tradition. Every hallway demands duty. And yet, beneath its grandeur lies something else, something outdated, cold, and needing change. The palace itself is under renovation, a literal metaphor for the monarchy itself. Outdated plumbing, fading walls, hidden cracks beneath royal polish. William doesn't just inherit a palace, he inherits an institution begging for relevance. And he might just be the first king in generations to bring modern breath into its ancient halls. Technology, sustainability, and comfort, words rarely associated with royalty, could become his legacy if he dares to rewrite what's considered sacred. But the real sacrifice won't be his. It will be his children's. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, raised with care in a bubble of semi-privacy, will now be ushered into a life scripted by protocol. No more casual walks without flashbulbs. No more anonymity in the schoolyard. Their home will now be a national monument, and their bedrooms surrounded by guards, advisors, and expectations. For William and Kate, this move is not just geographical, it's psychological. They must now balance royal obligations with the most personal of battles, preserving their children's innocence inside the monarchy's most watched fortress. William has always shown glimpses of rebellion against rigid tradition, but now, inside the lion's den, how much will he truly be able to protect? The world will be watching, not just to see how he wears the crown, but how he carries the weight of being both king and father, how he juggles the iron cage of monarchy with the fragile world of bedtime stories and family dinners. The palace may welcome him with pomp, but it will demand pieces of him in return. But stepping into the palace is just the beginning. His true power lies in something far older. He's not just king, He's the church's supreme force. When William steps into the crown, he doesn't merely inherit the throne, he inherits a title that dates back to a moment of rebellion, power, and spiritual conquest. Supreme Governor of the Church of England, a role forged in fire by Henry VIII when he split from Rome and reshaped the very fabric of British religion. Since then, every monarch has held it, not just as a figurehead, but as the binding thread between church and crown, heaven and state. Now, that thread rests in William's hands, and the weight of it is heavier than ever before. This isn't just about tradition, it's about power. Quiet power. The kind that doesn't roar, but whispers. Through rituals, ceremonies, and ancient texts, though he won't personally select bishops or archbishops, William must approve them, lending his authority to decisions that shape the spiritual voice of the nation. It's ceremonial on the surface, but beneath that surface lies the real struggle: relevance. In a world increasingly divided by faith, cynicism, by distance from old beliefs, can a king still unite the sacred with the secular? For William, this role comes with a tension his predecessors never truly faced. He is a monarch molded by modern times, a man who has walked among crowds not just as royalty, but as a father, a husband, and a human being. His approach to faith has always leaned toward inclusion, respect for all religions, open doors instead of locked chapels. He knows Britain no longer kneels at one altar. It kneels at many. And while the title of Supreme Governor demands allegiance to the Church of England, William may try to reshape that allegiance not in doctrine, but in tone, in voice, in message. That message could be one of unity, of healing, of embracing diversity, while honoring the sacred past. But that mission won't come without backlash. There are those who guard tradition like it's a kingdom of its own. Those who see any change as betrayal. If William chooses to modernize this ancient role, even slightly, he won't just be pushing against centuries of ritual, he'll be confronting a storm of resistance. And the Church, while cloaked in peace, does not always welcome reformers. Still, his very existence is already change. He is the first monarch raised in a world of interfaith marriages, global migration, and open dialogue. He knows how faith can divide, but he also knows how it can bind. As he steps into this spiritual role, he may not wield holy authority in the way past kings did. But his words, his presence, his willingness to listen, they may become the most powerful instruments of all. Because this isn't just about prayers and pulpits. It's about guiding a nation's conscience. And in doing so, William may not only honor the Church's roots, but redefine what they mean for a new generation. But beyond faith, there's a deeper role awaiting the symbolic ruler of an entire kingdom. He won't make laws, but his presence will shape the nation. Prince William will never stand at a ballot box, never sign a bill into law, never cast a vote. Yet when he becomes king, his shadow will stretch across every corner of British life. His role is ceremonial and is anything but hollow. Because in a world obsessed with power, William's strength lies not in legislation, but in symbolism. Symbols, when rooted in centuries of tradition and reinforced by the eyes of a nation, can move mountains. As head of state, William will be the living face of a constitutional monarchy, a man who reigns without ruling, who influences without commanding. Every handshake with a world leader, every silent bow at a war memorial, every moment standing still as a nation watches. These are not empty gestures. They are messages. Messages of continuity, of dignity, of history that refuses to die. When William hosts presidents and prime ministers, It's not diplomacy, it's reassurance. It's the quiet power of presence. Because while governments rise and fall, the crown endures. And in that endurance, people find a strange kind of peace. Behind closed doors, he will meet with the Prime Minister in private, once a week. No press, no recordings, no transcripts. Just two people, one elected, one born into legacy, discussing the fate of a nation. And though he cannot dictate policy, his voice will echo with experience, with instinct, with the weight of having watched every storm from the center of calm. His opinions, unspoken to the world, may sway the course of history, or they may hold back chaos. And when a bill passes through Parliament, William will sign his name to it not out of choice, but out of duty. The royal assent is a formality, yes. No monarch has rejected a law in more than 300 years. But still, the act is watched. Because it's not just a signature, it's the stamp of legacy. A reminder that beneath democracy, the monarchy still breathes. He will not be absent from the stage. William will stand at the cenotaph on Remembrance Day, wearing the silence of grief-like armor. He will open Parliament with words written by another, but carried on his voice. And though the speech belongs to the government, the moment belongs to him. The robes, the crown, the watchful eyes of a country waiting for reassurance, it all rests on his shoulders. In an age of digital noise and fractured trust, William's neutrality will be his greatest weapon. He must never take sides and never show political bias. And yet, he must speak for everyone. Represent the homeless and the billionaires, the immigrants and the aristocrats, the silent and the angry. He must embody identity without choosing identity. That paradox is the throne. Abroad, he will walk red carpets of diplomacy, not as a politician, but as a symbol. One man representing the hopes, history, and contradictions of the United Kingdom. And in every photo, every awkward handshake, every smile or frown captured in headlines, his posture will speak louder than his words ever could. Because William's true power isn't in policy, it's in perception. But even his voice can't escape tradition, especially when the anthem plays. For the first time, the anthem won't change, but its meaning might. God Save the King are 6 words that have echoed through centuries of British triumphs, tragedies, and turning points. A song that once stirred soldiers to battle, comforted mourners during national grief, and crowned moments of royal glory with solemn reverence. But now, as Prince William prepares to ascend the throne, the anthem stands at a peculiar crossroads. It will remain lyrically untouched, unchanged from his father's reign. For the first time in modern history, the transition of power will not bring a lyrical shift from queen to king. The words will stay the same, but the nation behind them has changed. Originally written in the 1700s, the anthem was never just a song. It was a declaration of unity, a plea for divine protection, a rallying cry for identity. Yet, what happens when tradition no longer reflects the voices of those who sing it? In a Britain grappling with regional divides, cultural evolution, and generational shifts, the anthem's unyielding permanence has sparked uncomfortable questions. Should it be more inclusive? Should it represent all the nations of Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland equally? Or is its unchanging nature the very thing that makes it sacred? The pressure is rising. Some want the lyrics rewritten, modernized, or reimagined entirely. Others view such a move as an unforgivable break from tradition. William stands at the center of this silent battle, his future reign already weighed down by the delicate task of preserving legacy while embracing progress. He may not change the words, but he could change the moment. The way the anthem is used, the voices that sing it, and the stages it is performed on. With William's reputation for empathy and quiet revolution, subtle gestures may speak louder than rewritten lines, because in this era, symbolism is power. And sometimes, a pause before the first note or the inclusion of unheard voices in a royal chorus can rewrite history without touching a single word. The anthem may remain untouched on paper, but in the hearts of millions, its meaning is already evolving. As William prepares to lead a kingdom that no longer fits neatly into a single tradition, God Save the King becomes more than a national song. It becomes a mirror reflecting both who we were and who we are becoming. But change is coming, and it's written in the laws of the crown. In this new monarchy, a girl can't be passed over finally. For centuries, the rules of succession were brutally clear. If you were born a girl, you waited behind your brother regardless of age, ability, or preparation. Gender decided the crown. It was tradition. It was law. And it was quietly cruel. But in 2013, that ancient system shattered. The Succession to the Crown Act changed everything. For the first time in British royal history, birth order, not gender, would decide who would inherit the throne. It was a move that didn't just adjust protocol, it redrew the future. And in that future stands Princess Charlotte. Born in 2015, Charlotte is the second child of Prince William and Catherine. But thanks to this groundbreaking change, she is not. Second to her younger brother, Prince Louis. She stands ahead of him in the line to the throne. That simple positioning is monumental. It means the royal family, long seen as a symbol of tradition, has taken a step into modernity. No longer will a daughter be quietly nudged aside for her younger brother. No longer will lineage be determined by outdated hierarchy. The law now recognizes equality, and Charlotte represents the first living proof of that promise. This isn't just a personal victory for one royal child, it's a structural pivot for an institution often accused of being stuck in the past. It aligns the UK with other modern monarchies across Europe, where queens now reign not by exception, but by right. In Sweden, the Netherlands, and Norway, female heirs are no longer sidelined. Britain, once the reluctant reformer, has finally joined the movement. And this decision echoes far beyond the palace gates. It sends a message that monarchy and equality don't have to be at war, that even the most ancient thrones can adjust to the values of today. Yet, the implications run deeper. Because succession isn't just about who becomes king or queen, it's about visibility, influence, power. Charlotte will grow up knowing she was never less than, that her future, while unpredictable, was never dependent on the gender she was born with. That knowledge changes a person. It shapes their confidence, their decisions, and the way the world sees them. And for William and Catherine, it redefines their parenting. They are raising a daughter who may one day sit on the throne, and no law, no crown, no man can push her aside. This shift also challenges the public's relationship with the monarchy. For many, it's proof that change is possible, that even an institution built on birthright can evolve toward fairness. For others, it raises questions about what else can utview or should be modernized. If gender bias can fall, what about outdated titles, public funding, royal roles? The reform opens the door to more, and behind that door lies a new kind of monarchy, one that mirrors the values of the people it serves. But, as with all royal changes, this progress is cloaked in symbolism. It's not just about Charlotte. It's about every girl who watched a system shift, Who saw a crown acknowledge her worth? The royal family may not hand out laws, but it sets a tone. And in this moment, that tone is unmistakable. The future is not just male, it's fair, but titles are more than the order, they hold the weight of history. Kate becomes queen, but not the way most think. When William takes the throne, Catherine Middleton won't become a ruler in the traditional sense. She won't issue commands or sign acts of law. She won't hold royal authority in her name. But make no mistake, her role will carry a weight no crown can measure. As queen consort, Kate will become one of the most influential women on the global stage. And her power, though unofficial, will ripple through the monarchy in ways that challenge centuries of expectations. She'll be called Queen Catherine, a title drenched in elegance and history. But the truth of her reign lies not in ceremony, but in impact. Because Kate's legacy was never built on gold or grandeur, it was built in silence. In hospitals, listening to families who felt forgotten. In classrooms, sitting with children as they navigated trauma. In charity offices, far from photographers, reshaping how mental health is perceived. While the world saw tiaras and gowns, she was doing something far more dangerous. In royal terms, she was being relatable. And that relatability is what makes her reign so different. She's not just a queen consort. She's a modern monarch influence, a soft architect of change. And yet, it's not just her future that shifts when the crown lands on William. Their eldest son, Prince George, begins a transformation of his own. In line to become Prince of Wales, he steps into the same legacy his father inherited after Queen Elizabeth's death. But the title isn't guaranteed. William had to wait for it to be granted. And so will George. But once it's him, the title will carry the same invisible chains: public duty, eternal scrutiny, and no room for mistakes. His life will no longer be defined by the freedom of youth, but by the long shadow of destiny. As George steps into his future, he begins to mirror his father in more ways than one. The posture, the calm exterior, the pressure no child should bear. But this time, he'll have something. William didn't parents who've walked through the fire and emerged not just stronger, but more human. Kate, as queen consort, will be his anchor. Not the kind that holds you down, but the kind that keeps you steady in a storm. Her strength, quiet and unwavering, will shape the next generation of royals. Not through orders or decrees, but through compassion, authenticity, and example. Her influence won't be printed in law books. It won't be spoken from palace balconies. It will be felt in policy shifts, in charity funding, and in the way future monarchs choose to lead. Queen Catherine may never rule, but she will reign in a way few consorts before her ever dared. She will rewrite what it means to stand beside a king not as decoration, but as definition. But not all royal bonds are secure, especially the one most fractured. He left the palace, but will his brother welcome him back? When Prince Harry walked away from royal life in 2020, it wasn't just a step back, it was a seismic rupture in a family built on structure, silence, and ceremonial loyalty. Alongside Meghan, he turned his back on the crown, the cameras, and the calculated performances demanded by life inside the royal machine. The announcement stunned the world, but for those within the palace walls, it was more than rebellion. It was a betrayal. And in the years that followed, the fractures deepened, turning quiet tension into a global spectacle. Now, as Prince William prepares to wear the crown, the question haunting the monarchy isn't one of law or lineage, but blood. Will the brother he once confided in return to the fold, or remain a distant echo of what once was? Harry's life in California is far removed from royal tradition. He raises his children away from the paparazzi storm he once knew. He builds brands, signs media deals, and pursues humanitarian work on his terms. Free, yes, but also without the shield of royal legacy. That shield, once his birthright, now sits behind a gate he may no longer have the key to. William faces a brutal dilemma. The monarchy demands unity, image, and stability. And Harry, with all his charisma and chaos, threatens all three. Reintegrating him could bring public goodwill or reignite internal turmoil. Offering him a limited role, one bound to charity appearances and special events, might seem like a compromise. But even that hinges on trust, something the brothers seem to have lost. Their relationship, once close, is now layered in silence. Old wounds and public accusations, the betrayal of privacy, the tell-all interviews, the Netflix docuseries. It wasn't just personal, it was institutional. And yet, there is no erasing Harry's royal blood. No matter how far he runs, the crown follows. His name remains etched in the royal line, his face stamped in history books, his story forever tangled with the monarchy's fate. William cannot erase his brother's existence, nor can Harry undo his origins. The question now is whether the duty will overcome the damage, whether the king-in-waiting can separate his public responsibilities from private pain, whether forgiveness, if it ever comes, can be offered not in words, but in space. The monarchy has always survived scandal, divorce, abdication, even rebellion. But a fractured brotherhood at the heart of the institution is a wound that doesn't bleed, it echoes. And as the crown passes from father to son, that echo only grows louder. Harry's future in William's reign is unwritten. A door may remain ajar, or it may close forever. One thing is certain: his absence will never be invisible. And while family ties shift behind closed doors, public rituals begin in plain sight. The crown never pauses, not even for death. In the moment a monarch's heart stops beating, the machinery of the British monarchy lurches into motion. There is no time to mourn, no pause for breath. Because in this world, the crown doesn't rest, it transfers. In silence, behind closed doors, the ancient rite of continuity begins. The Accession Council, a body woven from centuries of power and tradition, is summoned. No debate, no delay. They gather at St. James's Palace, not to choose a king, but to recognize the one destiny has already delivered. And with a single proclamation, Prince William becomes King William. Just like that. No trumpet, no crown, just obligation. But even as the ink dries on that declaration, the nation remains in mourning. Flags fall to half-mast. News anchors speak in hushed tones. Streets grow quieter, as if the entire country holds its breath. The monarch may have changed, but the grief is fresh, and the rituals have only just begun. The funeral, when it comes, will be both spectacle and sorrow. The late king will lie in state, his coffin visited by hundreds of thousands. The state funeral, broadcast to the world, will draw global leaders, royalty, and millions of eyes. The loss is personal for a family, but profoundly symbolic for a nation. Yet through this grief, preparations for something far older, far grander unfold. The coronation, a ritual almost unchanged for over 1,000 years, held at Westminster Abbey, drenched in history and sacred weight. William will take an oath public, binding, and irrevocable. He'll be anointed with oil in a moment hidden from public view, considered so holy it must remain unseen, and then placed on his head the legendary St. Edward's crown, heavy, ornate, and unforgiving. The crown is not just a symbol of rule, it is a burden forged in gold. But William may choose not to follow every path laid before him. Just as his father simplified his coronation, William could pare it down further with less opulence and more message, less performance, more meaning. In a time when faith in institutions is fading, he may aim for something different: service over ceremony, inclusion over exclusivity. He could invite voices long left out of royal rituals and use the moment not to exalt the past, but to signal the future. A future where monarchy means more than jewels and hymns. Still, no matter how modern the touch, the foundations remain ancient. These ceremonies exist not to glorify a person, but to steady a nation. They are anchors during chaos, continuity disguised as pageantry. For the public, they offer reassurance that the monarchy, however flawed, continues. That no matter who wears the crown, the structure holds. And as the trumpets fade, as the mourning ends, and the gold crown gleams under a new name, something else begins to shift. Quietly, symbolically. A change you don't feel, but one you carry in your hands every day. But even after the ceremonies end, the signs of a new era begin to appear in your wallet. Every coin, every note, a reminder of who wears the crown. With William's rise to the throne, the transformation isn't just spoken in speeches or witnessed in ceremonies. It's felt in the smallest of places: pocket change, bank withdrawals, cash registers. The familiar face of Charles, printed and stamped across the nation's currency, will slowly be replaced by a new image: William's. A face turned left by tradition, because each monarch alternates direction from their predecessor. It's subtle, but symbolic. A silent shift of power etched into metal and paper. A new reign, declared not in words, but in weight, in worth, in what the people hold in their hands. This change won't happen overnight. Old and new will coexist, side by side. Charles's image will linger for years, gradually fading as William's takes hold. And it's not just the United Kingdom that will see this evolution. Commonwealth nations like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, those who still use the monarch's image, will face the same question. Will they print his portrait? Or will this moment be the one that pushes them toward independence? The choice, like the currency, becomes a statement. Because a monarch's face on money is never just about design. It's about legitimacy, legacy, control. And with William's portrait begins a new chapter, less about age-old authority and more about relevance in a changing world. Coins become history lessons. Banknotes become relics of a living dynasty. And the public, knowingly or not, accepts the symbolism with every transaction. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.